Illinois fell victim to a 2016 cyber attack of its voter registration database. Although there was no reported impact on voters, the state's being proactive right now when it comes to security threats.
23 News reporter Anthony Ferretti talks with a local lawmaker about the state's plans for a secure election.
Integrity and security is in the forefront when it comes to our election.
In preparation for the 2024 primary and general election, State Representative Maurice West works with other state leaders to minimize the number of security threats to Rockford's 89,000 registered voters.
This is our way to ensure that we are ahead of any misinformation or any deep fake information that we saw in 2020.
West says his biggest concern is how artificial intelligence could make its way into the election.
When AI is at that place where it can spread its wings and fly a little bit into election security, we will have that shield in place, those measures in place to make sure we're ahead.
One measure the Rockford Board of Elections has in place is the state Cyber Navigator program that ensures all 108 jurisdictions have equal access to resources that stop cyber attacks.
We understand the importance of protecting the integrity of our elections. Illinoisans should be confident that our elections are administered in a safe and secure manner.
The board also has a 24/7 services desk and security operations center with backup servers created every 15 minutes.
It's important to know that we are secure every single day, not just election day.
Working for you in Rockford, Anthony Ferretti, 23 News.
West adds the state will use its social media platforms to share information with voters to ensure their ballots will be accounted for.